First, they were worried about the press being too tough on them during debates. Now they're worried about 3-year-old orphans. That doesn't sound very tough to me. They've been playing on fear in order to try to score political points or to advance their campaigns. And it's irresponsible. And it's contrary to who we are. And it needs to stop because the world is watching.
President Obama in Manila scolding Republicans who oppose allowing Syrian refugees into our nation. You heard him say they were criticizing orphans, but there seems to be some disagreement about exactly who those Syrian refugees are. Let's bring in our panel. For more, we welcome from Newsmax Washington the former ambassador to the UN Human Rights Commission, as well as the former mayor of Cincinnati, Ken Blackwell, who's currently the senior fellow at the Family Research Council. Also joining us from Atlanta, Georgia, the chairman of Insider Advantage, Matt Towery. Matt's a political analyst, pollster, and the author of Newsvesting, and we welcome you both. Ken, more than half the nation's governors say Syrian refugees are not welcome in their respective states. The president, on the other hand, claims the rhetoric could turn into a, quote, potent recruitment tool for ISIS. What's your take on that?
Well, first, these are displaced persons. They are not persecuted refugees. Most of them are fleeing Syria because Syria is a failed state which is in economic disarray. And so the president's broadening of the term refugee is wrong on its face. He is basically wrong in doing the analysis of the breakout of who is among that group of displaced persons. A clear majority of them are military-age males. And so as a consequence of what we now know about how terrorists are infiltrating those groups of displaced persons and so-called refugees, the president is wrong and failing the nation in carrying out his responsibilities to advance national security and to protect our domestic homeland.
Matt, by no means is there unanimity, but I have seen some postings from evangelical Christians suggesting that keeping these refugees out is unchristian. Will Republican candidates have to tread carefully or risk losing some evangelical voters?
I don't think so, and here's the reason why. Even as we go into this evening, we've learned today that there was another cell, another group of terrorists who were captured, actually killed in Paris. They were planning to do a completely different attack on Paris. And Reuters is reporting today that there were individuals crossing the border out of Honduras carrying Greek passports, but who are Syrians, headed to the United States. And this story has more legs than just Paris last week. And I'm not diminishing Paris. It was a tremendous tragedy. I don't think these Republicans are going to have to concentrate too much on this refugee issue much longer. This is now beginning to become a major issue for the United States and the world. And I don't think we're going to be focusing on this in about 4 or 5 days. The president has a real problem on his hands.
Ken, our president says... Go ahead.
Let me say, I think it's important that we also debunk another myth, and that is that we are vetting these folks. We're not vetting them. We might be interviewing them, but we're not vetting them because vetting requires data upon which you can, in fact, do background checks. That data does not exist, so you cannot vet these folks. And to suggest that you should do it just on a superficial interview is, again, opening the door to terrorists and putting Americans potentially at risk.
About a minute remains. Ken, let me ask you this. The president was claiming that a religious test for these refugees is not American, but federal law requires it. And in a recent analysis of some 2,100 refugees allowed into the country from Syria, less than 3% were Christian, 96% were Muslim. Should our president focus on these Christian refugees or just completely halt the flow of anyone into the U.S. from Syria right now?
Well, first, I think the president is dead wrong. I don't recall Muslims getting their heads cut off. I do realize the reality that there are Christians that have gotten their heads cut off. But if you talk with Syrian Christians, what they want is a safe haven. They don't care if it's in nearby safe places in the Middle East or in other locations. So we need to stop positioning this as if you want to help children and mothers, that you must do it by opening the floodgates to terrorist infiltration. It's just ridiculous on its face.
Ken Blackwell from Newsmax Washington and Matt Towery from Atlanta, Georgia. Matt, the author of the new book, News Vesting. Gentlemen, you have our thanks. When we come up, sports and possible jobs for veterans. We'll explain the connection when we continue.